Hey everyone, today I have a workout targeting the glutes that's going to take you just over 17 minutes to complete. You're going to need a set of heavy dumbbells for these. I am using two 20-pound weights. You could go up or down from there. I'm also going to be using a resistance band loop around my upper thighs. This is optional. For some of the exercises, it's not going to really make a difference if you're wearing this or not, but for the squats and the hip lifts, this will add a little bit of a challenge if you want to wear one of these. And a little tip, the small rubber resistance band loops, I like those for upper body work, but sometimes, you know, when you're doing lower body stuff with them and they're around your thighs, they roll up to your hips. So I would suggest using one of these heavy duty bands. I'll link to the one I have below, but this is awesome for lower body stuff around your upper thighs because it really doesn't move. Another optional piece of equipment that I'm going to use today is a stepper. You could use any sort of bench. I'm just going to use it for one move when we're doing hip bridge lifts, just for an added challenge, but you can totally do those hip lifts just having your foot on the floor instead of an elevated surface. The exercises in this workout are either going to be held for 40 seconds or 70 seconds. That might seem like a random amount of time, but it's really to account for transition time in between them. So really it's more like 30 seconds or 60 seconds. You're going to do a series on the left, you'll repeat it on the right leg, you will rest, and then we'll do the whole thing again. The shorter exercises, the ones we only hold for 40 seconds, those are center squatting exercises, and that will change slightly as we go through the workout. But the ones that you hold for 70 seconds, those are the same every time. I'm going to give you a preview of the exercises before we get going. If you're looking for modifications, the best way to modify is just use lighter weights, okay? So maybe you have two sets on hand, a heavier set and then a drop set. In case they get to be too much, you can go a little lighter. As with all workouts, you want to make sure you're properly warmed up beforehand and always listen to your body, modifying or stopping as needed. I'm not going to play music in the background of this because I want you to be able to listen to whatever music you like. So if you don't have a playlist queued up, you might want to get that going. And with all that said, let's get to the preview. Start with a weighted squat. So just grab one of the heavy weights and we're going to hold it at our chest under our chin. If you're using the resistance band loop, which is optional, have it a couple inches above your knees around your upper thighs. 40 seconds on the clock here. Weight is in your heels, butt and hips slide down and back. As your hips slide back and you sink into the squat, your torso is hinging forward, but you're not hunching, okay? So think long spine, chest is open, and don't let that weight cause your shoulders to collapse forward. Think of rolling your shoulder blades together and kind of down your spine. Now, if this is too much, you could always do this body weight. If you're looking for a little more, you could use both weights, but fair warning, we are going to get there, so we will add on a little more weight soon. About 10 seconds here, and then we're going to go into single leg deadlifts. We're going to start with the right leg today. I want you to grab both weights for this next move. If it's too heavy, you can always drop back down to one. Your right foot is going to be forward. You're going to plant the ball of your left foot a couple inches behind the right heel. From here, it's a deadlift. So it's a hip hinge, not necessarily a squat, okay? So think hips drawing back, torso hinges forward, but we keep that nice flat back, chest open, so don't let the weights cause your shoulders to hunch forward. Weight is in your right heel, and you're very light on that left foot. It should almost feel like you could lift that left foot off the floor and still do this. Now, if you want to drop down to one weight, ditch the weight in your right hand and just hold on to the one in your left hand. You're over halfway there. And remember, the reason the times are kind of weird on this, 40 seconds and 70 seconds, is to account for transition time. So if it takes you 10 seconds to get from one move to the next, good. That's kind of the point. Don't worry about missing out on time. In about 10 seconds, we're going to drop one of the weights. You're just going to need one, and we're going to come into a clamshell lift on the floor. Okay, now still isolating that right side, we're gonna come into kind of a kneeling side plank. Your right forearm and your right knee are on the floor. The weight is gonna come to the top of your left hip. Now, as you lift your hips up into this kind of kickstand side plank position, I want you to lift that top left knee up, hinging open. So it's a clamshell. So your toes are staying touching. And as you lift, you're thinking of rotating the top left thigh up and open. So you're squeezing into the seat. You're going to mainly feel this in your bottom right side glute, but the left side glutes are definitely working here as well, pushing against that resistance band. And if you're not using the resistance band, you're still going to feel this because we have that weight, okay? So no big deal. Still think of opening up, rotate, open through the hips, squeeze your seat, toes stay touching. If you can, I don't want you to rest your hips all the way down on the floor, okay? So you come, you just kind of hover them, and you're gonna lift back up powerfully, squeeze, pause for a second at the top. In 10 seconds, we're gonna come into our final move, isolating this right side. We're gonna do a hip bridge, so we'll stay on the floor. We'll bring that right foot to a step or just the floor. All right, and let's transition. So focus still that right side. So right foot on the step bench if you're using it, or just on the floor. Left leg is going to be hovering. Weight is on your hips. We're lifting the hips up into a bridge position and lowering back down. Weight is in your right heel. Now, I don't care if you're hovering, left knee is bent, or if you have the leg straight. Do what works best for you. When you lift up into this bridge position, I don't just want you to clench your low back, okay? In fact, I want you to pull your belly button down towards the spine so that your core is active, and that's gonna help prevent any hyperextension through that low back. Instead, we wanna lift using the glutes and the hamstrings. So I want you to picture you're making a fist with that right butt cheek as you drive the hips up and slowly lower down. And when you lower down, again, try to just lower to a hover instead of resting your hips all the way on the floor. You have under 15 seconds to go. Stay with it. If this is too much, ditch the weight. Just do it body weight. Okay, now we're going to start at the top. This isn't a rest. I want you to start transitioning. I'm just going to give you a few extra seconds to account for getting what you need. We're going to do squats again, so one weight, and we're going to add a lateral step at the bottom. So you're going to squat down low, you're going to step to the side, and then you're going to rise up. You're going to lower down again, step to the other side, and then come up. One step, come to the top, lower back down. One side step, up to the top, lower down. And again, I gave you a few extra seconds. Also, the 40 seconds, I really intend it to be like 30 seconds. So don't stress it if you're not starting right when the clock goes off, okay? So we're trying to stay low when we do that side step. This is one where if you have that resistance band on, it's going to add a big challenge. But like I've been saying, doesn't matter. You don't need that band. Weight is staying in your heels as you sink down. Whoop, time to switch. We're going to that deadlift. Left leg is the focus this time, okay? So left foot is going to be forward. Ball of the right foot is a couple inches behind that left heel. You're very light on that back foot, okay? It's just for balance support. From here, your hips hinge back, you lower down, you come up to the top. Now, as you stand to the top, I really want you to finish it like you would coming out of a squat. You're going to drive the hips forward, squeeze the seat, but we don't hyperextend through the low back. So as you squeeze the seat, you also squeeze your abs. So when you're standing, it's almost like you're in a vertical plank. Weight is in that left heel, and we're not hunching through that upper body, okay? So roll your shoulder blades down your spine. If this is too heavy and you want to drop down to just one weight, ditch the weight in your left hand and just use the one in your right hand. Just over 10 seconds to go here, and then we'll come into those clamshell lifts. All right, ditch one of the weights. We're going to come to the floor. It's going to be your left knee and your left forearm on the ground. The weight is going to be on top of your right hip. Hips are going to be hovering over the floor, and then we're going to drive them up as if we were coming into a side plank. And as we do, we're going to take that top right knee and we're going to open it up like a clamshell. So your feet are touching the whole time. The knees are opening up, pulling apart, external rotation. Let's check it on our upper body real quick. I don't want you sinking into that left shoulder. So I want you to think of pushing the floor away, keep your neck long. Main focus here is the bottom left side glutes as we lift up, but you're going to feel the top right side as well as you do that external rotation. You have under 15 seconds to go, and then we're going to come into the last exercise for this left side before you get some time to recover. All right, let's take it to that single leg hip bridge. This time it's your left foot that is going to go on the stepper, or if you're not using a stepper, just plant your left foot on the floor. Your right leg is going to be hovering. I don't care if the right knee is bent or the leg is straight, up to you. Weight comes to your hips, and from here you're driving those hips up towards the ceiling, squeezing into the base of the seat. Abs are engaged so that we're not just hyperextending through the low back. And see if you can add a little pause at the top. So squeeze, hold for a second, and then lower to a hover. And again, if possible, I just want you to lower to a hover. I don't want you to rest your hips all the way on the floor. And if it gets to be too much, you can always ditch that weight. You have 30 seconds to go, and then I'm going to give you 30 seconds to recover. Keep it up. Now check in on your hips, make sure they're level to the ceiling, okay? That right hip might want to drop a little lower than the left, level them off. And 30 seconds to rest here. Now we're going to repeat that entire thing from the top, but when we do those center squat exercises, we're going to try to ramp up the weight, okay? So instead of using just one weight, we're going to use two. Now, if you're thinking about that, like, no way, it was hard enough as is with just one weight, then stick to one dumbbell, okay? You don't have to add in the second. So those weighted squats are coming up next. This time, if you can, grab both weights. 40 seconds on the clock now. Let's get to it. So same deal, rack those weights on your shoulders this time though, instead of under your chin. Hips are going to slide down and back. Torso hinges forward, but you don't hunch. So think about keeping your chest open and lifted. Weight is in the heels. And if you have that resistance band loop on, you're thinking of pushing out against it, okay? Don't let it pull your knees inward. You don't want to be knocked knees on this. You want the knees tracking in line with those middle toes. Just over 10 seconds to go. We're going to keep both weights for the next exercise. We'll take it into those single leg deadlifts on the right. Okay, so bring the weights down in front of you, one in each hand. Your right foot is forward. Your left foot is planted a couple inches behind that right heel. Keep it light, okay? So the left foot's just there to help you out with balance. From here, instead of bending through the knees and thinking of starting with a squat, the first movement is hips back. So as your hips hinge back, your torso hinges forward. Keep a flat back and an open chest. And as you come up, remember you're squeezing the seat at the top. So as you drive up, make a fist with that right butt cheek. Abs in tight as well though. So we're not just thrusting our hips forward and arching into the low back. No, abs in tight. If this gets to be too much, remember you can ditch one weight. And if you're going to ditch one weight, ditch the one in your right hand. Keep the one in your left hand. "15 seconds to go. Give me a couple more quality reps. We're going to come into those clamshell lifts. So make your way down into that side plank position. So it's right forearm and right knee on the floor. Weight goes to your outer left hip. If you have a heavier weight available and you want to try to ramp this one up a notch, use that heavier weight. And the opposite is true. If this is getting to be too much, maybe go to a drop set, use a lighter weight, or you could even do body weight. I want a brief pause at the top, okay? So up, really squeeze into the seat, hold, and then lower your hips with control. And when you lower them, just lower them to a hover. Try not to rest completely unless you're purposely modifying. Let's check in with that right shoulder. So your ear shouldn't be resting on your shoulder. Think of pushing the floor away, long neck. These are longer intervals and heavier weights than I kind of normally do on this channel. So it's not about how many reps you get in. It's not about speed. Quality over quantity always. Let's take it into that single leg hip bridge. This is your last isolated right leg exercise. So your right foot is on the stepper if you're using that elevated surface, or it can just be on the floor. If you're planting it on the floor, you want to kind of scoot your hips close to the heels so that you could touch that right heel if you needed to, and that'll make sure you're in the right alignment. Weight is at your hips, but if it's getting too heavy, you can always ditch it or just use a lighter weight. Drive through that right heel as you thrust your hips into the air, squeezing into the seat, abs in tight as well though. You have 30 seconds to go here. When you thrust those hips up to the top, kind of pause for a second, okay? So it's up, squeeze at the top, and then lower down with control. Give me a couple more quality reps here. You have just over 10 seconds. Okay, and again, this isn't a rest. I'm just giving you a few extra seconds for transition time. That being said, if you do need to rest, you could always hit pause on the video. We are going to come into that squat with the lateral step at the bottom. And again, we're trying to use both weights, okay? So if you can, rack both heavies at your shoulders. Sink down, it's one step to the side, and then drive to the top. Sink down, one step the other direction, drive to the top. Use your breath to help you, okay? So if you look at me, you're noticing I'm exhaling as I drive my hips up to the top. As you can tell by my facial expressions, I am struggling, and that's the goal, okay? We're going heavy with the weights. So this should almost feel like cardio, okay? That's how heavy the weights are. It's challenging. Your heart rate is getting up there, even though we're not jumping around. Deadlifts. Left leg is the focus, okay? Keep both weights. They're down at your sides, or rather in front of you. Roll your shoulder blades down your back. Left foot is forward, and ball of the right foot is planted a couple inches behind that left heel. You know your options for modifying. Ditch one weight. And if you ditch a weight, ditch the one in your left hand. If you notice your shoulders starting to hunch forward and your back starting to round forward, when you get to the top, just pause for a second, roll your shoulder blades down your back, chest is open, and then after you do that rolling of the shoulder blades down your back, just make sure you didn't counter that by puffing out through your rib cage. So then just activate through the core, knit your ribs together. Last few seconds here, give me one more quality rep, maybe two. Okay, we're going to make our way down to the floor now. We have that clamshell lift. So I want your left forearm and left knee on the ground. Weight goes on top of your outer right hip. If you need to use a lighter weight or challenge yourself with a heavier weight, do that. And so as you lift the hips up, you're not just lifting the whole top leg. So remember, your feet stay touching the whole time. It's an external rotation, as if you were bringing your legs into sort of a diamond shape. So that top knee lifts up and open as if you were going to point it up towards the ceiling. Now, especially if you have a resistance band loop on, it is not going to point up to the ceiling. It's just going to lift up maybe 6 to 8 inches. That's okay. You should feel this mostly in your bottom left glute. That being said, you will absolutely feel it in the top right side as well. You should. Last few seconds here. Okay, and we're coming into our final 70 seconds of this workout. It is that single leg hip bridge. So the weight is going to come to your hips. Your left heel is on that step bench or the floor. Your right leg is hovering. Doesn't matter if your right knee is bent or the leg is straight. Do what works for you. If you have tight hamstrings, I would do a bent knee. Hips are square to the ceiling. So as you drive up through that left hip, don't let your right hip hang lower, okay? Lift it up in line. And it's going to force you to engage a little more through the seat as well. So it'll be a bigger challenge to keep those hips level. That's what I want. We're in the home stretch here. This is when we tend to get sloppy. If you notice form going out the window, slow it down, go lighter with the weight, or ditch the weight altogether, okay? Form trumps everything else. As you lift those hips up, don't just clench your low back, okay? Pull the belly button down towards the spine. The clenching happens in your butt, okay? Make a fist with that left butt cheek. Up. Pause at the top, lower down with control. Last few seconds, give me at least one more quality rep here, maybe 2. And done. Hope you enjoyed that workout. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys here next Monday.